I stood there in my mother's wedding dress, holding a checkbook, and I knew this was the beginning of the end. But I didn't know it was already the end of us. It was 88 degrees in the church. I remember that because the thermostat was stuck on the wall near the altar, and I could see it from where I stood. The thermostat was one of those old Honeywells, the kind my grandmother had. I was looking at it, thinking about how it must have been up there for 50 hours, because I was trying not to think about anything else. Clea read her throat. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at David. And David was looking at his shoes. We just need to get this out of the way, she said. Her voice was sweet. The kind of sweet that makes your teeth ache. David looked up. He looked at me. He said, my mother has a request. I asked him what it was. He didn't say it. She did. She said the number out loud. $50,000 Rs. It came out of her mouth like it was a bag of groceries. I didn't know what to say, so I laughed. I laughed because what else are you supposed to do when your future mother-in-law asks you to pay her son's family a dowry at the altar? And then David said, can we just do it? Please, and that's when I knew. I knew something was broken. The check Clea read on a Tuesday, 3 days after the wedding. I remember because I checked my account balance at lunch, and the number was just gone. $50,000 Rs. Poof. Like it had never been there. I'd pulled it from savings. Money I'd set aside for a down payment on a place we'd talked about buying together. That was the deal. We'd both contribute. He had his own savings. We'd pool them. I'd never asked to see his bank statement. I'd never asked much of anything. I was an architect. 42 years old. I'd been designing other people's homes for 15 years. I knew how to read a floor plan. I knew how to spot a load-bearing wall. I didn't know how to spot a man who'd let his mother hold the blueprints. The wedding was small. Just family. My mother had passed 5 years before, so I wore her dress. It was ivory lace with a high neck. Simple. The kind of dress you could dance in. I'd had it altered 3 times to fit me right. I remember standing in the fitting room, looking at myself in the 3-way mirror, thinking my mother would have liked David. She would have liked that he was steady, that he had a job, that he came from what we used to call good people. Good people. Marga Rhett was a retired school teacher. She taught 8th grade English for 32 years. She had a way of speaking that made you feel like you were being graded. She used words like propriety and decorum in casual conversation. She wore PRLS to breakfast. I thought it was charming at first. I thought she was just old-fashioned. I thought a lot of things. David and I had been together for 10 years, and I'd never once heard about any dowry. Not once. Not in passing. Not as a joke. Not even as a historical footnote. His father had been dead for 12 years. He RT attack. Marga Rhett had never remarried. She said she'd already had the best. The wedding was at St. Anne's, a small Catholic church near our apartment. We weren't particularly religious, but Marga Rhett was, and David said it would make her happy. I didn't see where we got my ride. I just wanted to be married. I wanted the ring, the name, the life. I wanted to stop being a girlfriend at 42. I wanted people to stop introducing me as David's partner. I wanted to be a wife. I got it. I got the ring, the name, the life. I just didn't get the partnership. We took a honeymoon to the coast. 3 days. It rained the whole time. I remember sitting in the hotel room, staring at the rain on the window, thinking about the check. I'd written it at the altar. Someone had brought me a checkbook. I don't remember who. The whole thing felt like a fever dream. I wrote the number, signed my name, and handed it to Marga Rhett. She didn't even look at it. She just folded it and put it in her purse. Like I'd handed her a receipt. David didn't talk about it on the honeymoon. He didn't talk about it at all. He held my hand, and he was sweet, and he made love to me like he meant it, and I convinced myself it was over. I convinced myself it was just a thing that happened. A weird, awkward thing. A story we'd laugh about someday. I was wrong. We went back to work. I was at a small firm, 5 architects total, mostly residential work. David was at a bigger place. Corporate commercial stuff. Office buildings. He'd been there for 12 years. He was senior. He had an office with a window. I'd been at my firm for 8 years. I had a drafting table and a view of the alley. I didn't mind. I liked my work. I liked the quiet. I liked designing homes for people who actually wanted to live in them. Margaret called every Sunday. It was like clockwork. She'd call at 4 o'clock. I'd be in the kitchen doing dishes or prepping for the week. David would take the call in the living room. He'd talk to her for an hour, sometimes longer. I'd hear the murmur of his voice through the wall, his low tone, the occasional laugh. I used to think it was sweet. A grown man who still talked to his mother. I thought it was a good sign. After the wedding, something changed. I couldn't prove it, but I could feel it. The calls got longer. He sta root taking them in the bedroom. He'd close the door. I'd be in the kitchen or the living room, and the door would be closed, and I'd think, okay, it's fine, they're just talking. He hasn't seen her. He's catching up. But I sta root noticing things. Small things. He'd come out of the bedroom and his face would be different. Tight. He'd smile at me, but it was the smile you give someone when you're not really there. I'd ask him what they talked about, and he'd say, oh, mom stuff. And he'd kiss my forehead, and I'd let it go. I let a lot of things go. 3 months after the wedding, I sta root looking at houses. We'd talked about it before. We'd agreed that after we were married, we'd start looking. We'd been renting for years. A 2-bedroom walk-up. Good light. Decent neighborhood. But it was time. I was 42. I wanted a garden. I wanted a place I could paint the walls without asking permission. I found a place online. A little craftsman in a neighborhood that was on the upswing. Good bones. Original hardwood. The kitchen needed work, but I could see it. I could see the island. I could see the breakfast bar. I could see coffee in the morning, the light coming through the windows. I sent the listing to David. He didn't reply. I thought he was busy. I sent it again the next day. He called me at lunch. It's nice, he said. But I don't think we're ready. Ready, David, we've been talking about this for 2 years. We have the savings. My mom's money is just sitting there. We could put a down payment and be fine. He was quiet for a long time. I could hear him breathing. What I said. Nothing. I don't know. The market's not great right now. Maybe we should wait. I looked at the listing again. The price was fair. The inspection report looked clean. The neighborhood was good. David, talk to me. What's going on? I'm just saying let's be smart. Let's not rush. I let it go. I let it go because I was tired of fighting. I let it go because I didn't want to be the woman who pushed. The woman who was too ambitious, too demanding. I'd seen that woman in other couples. I'd seen her lose. I didn't want to lose. 6 months after the wedding, I found the text. He'd left his iPad on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower. I was making coffee. The screen was lit. A message popped up from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "You're still my favorite person to talk to." I sta read at it. The coffee machine was dripping. I could hear the water running in the bathroom. The message was still there, sitting on the screen, not going anywhere. I picked up the iPad. I didn't think. I just did it. I opened the thread. It was a woman. She worked at his firm. I knew her name. He'd mentioned her before. Sarah. She was younger. Maybe 30. I'd met her at a holiday party. She had blonde hair and a laugh that was a little too loud. She'd smiled at me and said, "Oh, you're the architect. David talks about you all the time." I'd felt a swell of pride. I'd felt lucky. I'd thought, this is a good woman. She's kind. She respects him. The messages were not kind. There was nothing explicit. No dirty photos. Nothing I could show someone and say, look, this is proof. It was worse than that. It was personal. It was about me. It was about how he felt like he couldn't talk to me about certain things. About how I was too focused on the house. About how I didn't understand his mother. About how Sarah was so much easier to talk to. I read it all. The whole thread. Months of it. Messages at night when I was asleep. Messages during work hours when I was drafting. Messages about his stress, his mother, his feelings. Things he'd never told me. Things he'd never even come close to telling me. I found out he'd been talking to her about the dowry. He'd told her it was RD on him too. He'd told her he'd just wanted to make his mother happy. He'd told her he wished I'd handled it better. I put the iPad down. The coffee was cold. I poured it down the sink. The water stopped. I heard David moving around in the bathroom. The door opened. He came out in a towel, rubbing his hair with a hand towel. He saw me standing there. He smiled. He asked if I'd made coffee. Yeah, I said. I made it. But it got cold. I didn't tell him. I didn't say a word. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at him and realized I'd been looking at a stranger for 6 months, and I'd been too busy trying to be a good wife to notice. I didn't look at houses after that. I sta route looking at bank statements. I found the deed on a Thursday. It was tucked inside a folder in David's filing cabinet. The one he kept in the study, the one he'd told me was 4 old tax documents. I didn't believe him. I hadn't believed him for weeks. But I needed to see. I knew I shouldn't have been looking. That's what I kept telling myself. I was standing in his study, the door closed, the folder in my hands, and I knew it was wrong. I knew it was the kind of thing that made you the bad guy. But I did it anyway. The deed was dated 3 weeks before the wedding. It was for a property in Marga Rhett's name. A house. A small house. Not in our city. In a town about 2 hours north. Marga Rhett's hometown. I'd heard her mention it before. She'd grown up there. Her parents had lived there. She'd said she wanted to move back someday. I looked at the price. $50,000 RS. My $50,000 RS. I sat down. I sat on the floor of the study, the deed in my hands, and I just sat there. It was all there. The transaction record. The wire transfer from my account to Marga Rhett's. The purchase of the property. David's signature on the paperwork as the co-signer. He'd signed it the same week I'd written the check. He'd been in on it the whole time. I looked at the date again. 3 weeks before the wedding. He'd known. He'd known it was coming. He'd known she was going to ask for the money, and he'd already bought the property with it. He'd spent my savings before I'd even written the check. I folded the deed. I put it back in the folder. I closed the cabinet. I walked out of the study and into the kitchen, and I made myself a cup of tea. I stood at the counter and I drank it, and I thought about what it meant. It meant he'd lied to me. For months. It meant he'd planned it. It meant the dowry wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. It was a setup. Marga Rett asked, and he played along, and I paid, and then they both took the money and bought a house they'd never even told me about. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, drinking my tea, staring out the window at the street below. The neighbor's dog was barking. A car drove by. Normal things. Ordinary things. And I thought about how I'd spent the last 10 years of my life with a man who'd made me pay to be with him. Literally. I'd paid $50,000 RS for the privilege of being lied to. David came home at 6. He kissed my cheek. He asked how my day was. I told him it was fine. He asked what I'd done. I told him I'd worked on a new project. A kitchen remodel. He asked if it was interesting. I said it was. I watched him. I watched him walk around the apartment. I watched him sit on the couch. I watched him turn on the TV. I watched him scroll through his phone. I watched him smile at something on the screen. I watched him, and I saw a stranger. A man I'd never known. A man who'd taken my money and bought his mother a house. I had to get out. Not just out of the apartment. Out of the marriage. Out of the life I'd built around a man who didn't exist. But I couldn't just leave. I'd worked too hard. I'd given too much. I'd spent 15 years building a career. I'd spent 10 years building a relationship. I wasn't going to walk away with nothing. I wasn't going to let him keep the money. I wasn't going to let her keep the house. I sta route making a list. I wrote it on my phone in a notes app under the title Groceries. I wrote down everything I'd need to do. I needed to find out where the rest of the money was. I needed to see the joint account. I needed to see if he'd moved anything else. I needed to talk to a lawyer. I needed to document everything. I needed to be full. It took me 2 weeks to find the rest. 2 weeks of checking his computer. 2 weeks of opening his mail. 2 weeks of pretending nothing was wrong while he went to work and I went to work and we ate dinner and talked about the weather and his mother's next visit. She was coming down for Easter. She'd called to tell David. He'd RD the conversation from the kitchen. He'd taken it in the bedroom again. The door was closed, but I could hear his voice. Laughter. WARMTH. He loved her. He really did. He loved her more than he loved me, and he'd proven it. I found the investment account. A separate one. Not the joint account. One he'd opened at a different bank. One I'd never seen. I found it on his computer, in an email he'd forgotten to delete. A statement from the bank. A balance. $58,000 RS. My money hadn't just gone to the house. Some of it had gone into an account in his name. I took a picture of the screen. I took a picture of the deed. I took a picture of the email. I saved everything. I backed it up to a cloud account he didn't know about. I used my work computer, not my home computer. I was careful. I was deliberate. I was building a case. I called a lawyer. I found her through a friend. A woman. Divorce attorney. She was in her 50s, Shaw RP, no nonsense. I met her in a coffee shop, not her office, because I didn't want anything on paper yet. I told her the whole story. The dowry. The deed. The investment account. The messages from SA. She listened. She didn't flinch. He's concealed assets, she said. He's moved marital funds into accounts you don't have access to. That's fraud. It's not just a divorce. It's a legal issue. I don't want a big fight. I don't want a courtroom. I just want what's mine. She nodded. We can do that. But we have to be SMART. You don't tell him anything. You don't confront him. You don't even hint. You gather evidence, you let me build the case, and when we're ready, we hit him with it. All at once. What about the house, the one his mother bought with my money? We can argue that it was a marital asset. Or, at the very least, that it was a transfer made without your consent. We can put a lien on it. We can force a sale. We can do a lot of things. But you have to be patient. I was patient. I was the most patient I'd ever been in my life. I went home and I smiled at David and I made him dinner and I held his hand and I let him kiss me goodnight. I let him think everything was fine. I let him think I was still the woman who paid $50,000 RS at the altar. I was not that woman anymore. ISTA root watching SA. Not in a creepy way. I just paid attention. I knew she worked at his firm. I knew she was in the same department. I knew they had lunch together sometimes. I knew they had meetings. I knew all of this because I'd seen it in his calendar. He'd synced his work calendar to his phone, and his phone was on the counter. I'd seen the lunch dates, the coffee meetings, the project check-ins. I didn't confront him. I didn't confront her. I just watched. I built a mental timeline. I built a map of their relationship. ISTA root writing it down in the groceries note. Dates. Times. Places. Anything I could use. I found out she was married too. SA. Married to a man named Tom. She had a kid. A little girl, maybe 3 years old. I saw a photo on her social media. She was smiling, holding her daughter, standing in front of a Christmas tree. She looked happy. She looked like a good mother. She looked like someone who had everything to lose. I thought about telling her husband. I thought about it a lot. I thought about sending him an anonymous message. I thought about calling him. I thought about showing up at his door. I didn't do any of those things. Not yet. I kept that option on the table. I kept everything on the table. I went back to the deed. I read it again. I looked at the address. I looked up the property online. It was small. A 2-bedroom ranch. Nothing special. But it was worth more than $50,000 now. The market had gone up. It was probably worth 70, maybe 80. I thought about Margaret living in that house, sitting in a living room I'd paid for, drinking tea in a kitchen I'd bought. I thought about it, and I felt something shift inside me. I called the lawyer again. I told her about the property. I told her I wanted to claim it. I told her I wanted to put a lien on it. I told her I wanted to force a sale. She said we could do all of that. She said it would take time. She said we'd need to file the paperwork carefully. She said we'd need to do it without tipping him off. I sta rude moving money. Slowly. Ca refully. I opened a separate savings account. I transferred small amounts. A few hundred here. A few hundred there. I stopped depositing my entire paycheck into the joint account. I told David I was contributing to my retirement fund. I told him I was being smart with my money. He didn't ask questions. He never asked questions. I sta rude going for drives. Long drives. I'd tell him I was going to the grocery store. I'd get in my car and I'd drive north. 2 hours. I'd drive to the town where Margaret's house was. I'd drive past it. I'd slow down and look at it. I'd look at the lawn and the driveway and the porch, and I'd think about how it was mine. It wasn't hers. It was mine. I'd paid for it. I'd bought it with my blood and sweat and savings. And I was going to get it back. I drove past it 3 times. The 3rd time I stopped. I parked across the street. I sat in my car and I watched the house. No one was home. The curtains were drawn. The grass needed cutting. A car was in the driveway. An old sedan. Margaret's car. I sat there for 20 minutes. I didn't go to the door. I didn't knock. I just sat there and I thought about what I was going to do. I thought about my mother. I thought about her dress. I thought about how she'd never met David. How she'd never seen me walk down the aisle. How she'd never known what he'd done to me. I thought about how lucky she was to have missed it. I drove home. I made dinner. I sat across from David and I watched him eat, and I asked him about his day, and he told me about a project he was working on, and I nodded and smiled, and I thought about the house. I thought about the deed. I thought about the $50,000 RS. I thought about the Christmas CA road ISTA route designing the Christmas CARD in July. For months before I'd even need to send it. That's how long I'd been thinking about it. That's how long I'd been waiting. I sat at my drafting table at work, my real work pushed to the side, and I sketched out the design on a piece of scrap paper. It was going to be simple. Elegant. The kind of CARD you'd frame and put on your mantle. I wanted it to look like we were happy. I wanted it to look like we'd moved on. I wanted it to look like we'd won. But I needed more time. I needed to finish the legal work. I needed to get the lien in place. I needed to make sure everything was ready. I called the lawyer once a week. We spoke in code. I'd say I was calling about a project and she'd understand. She'd tell me the paperwork was processing. She'd tell me to be patient. She'd tell me to wait. I was good at waiting. I'd been waiting my whole life. I'd waited for David to propose. I'd waited for him to be ready. I'd waited for him to choose me. I wasn't going to wait anymore, but I could wait a little longer. Margaret came down for Easter. It was a Friday. She drove down in her old sedan, the same one I'd seen in the driveway. She parked in our building's lot, and she came up with a casserole dish and a bottle of wine. She hugged David. She kissed his cheek. She said something about how thin he looked. She patted his face. She looked at me. She smiled. "Elena," she said. "You look wonderful." She didn't mean it. She never meant it. I could always tell. The smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked at me like she was assessing a piece of furniture. Something she'd bought on sale and wasn't sure she liked. I smiled back. "Thank you, Margaret. You look well." We had dinner. Roast chicken. Potatoes. The casserole she'd brought. I drank wine. I made conversation. I asked about her house. I asked how she was settling in. I asked if she liked the neighborhood. "Oh, it's lovely," she said. "Quiet. Peaceful. Just what I needed at my age." "That sounds nice," I said. "A place to call your own." She nodded. She looked at David. She smiled at him. She had a way of smiling at him that was different from the way she smiled at me. It was warmer, more genuine. The smile of a woman who loved her son more than anything in the world. "David helped me with the purchase," she said. "He was very generous. Very supportive." I looked at David. He looked down at his plate. He didn't meet my eyes. "That's nice," I said. "It's good to have family support." The rest of the meal passed in a blur of small talk. The weather. The neighbor's dog. The new grocery store opening in town. I smiled. I nodded. I asked the right questions. I made the right sounds. But all I could think about was the deed in the filing cabinet, the text messages on the iPad, the investment account in his name, the $58,000 RS. I thought about all of it, and I smiled, and I ate my chicken. After dinner, I washed the dishes. David and Margaret sat in the living room. I could hear them talking. Low voices. Laughter. I could hear her saying something about a neighbor who was a bit four-way road. I could hear him laughing. I could hear her saying his name. David, you're so good to me. I put my hands in the sink, and I looked out the window at the street below, and I thought about the house. The house she was living in. The house I'd bought. I thought about how she'd never see it coming. How she'd walk into her living room one day, and there'd be a notice on her door. A lien. A claim. A letter from a lawyer saying the property was being contested. I wanted to see her face. I wanted to be there when she read it. I wanted to watch her crumble. I didn't tell David what I'd found. I didn't tell him about the deed. I didn't tell him about the lien. I didn't tell him about Sarah. I just kept going. I went to work. I came home. I made dinner. I slept next to him. I let him touch me. I let him hold me. I let him think I was still his. I was not still his. I hadn't been his for a long time. I just hadn't realized it until I saw the deed. The summer was hot. The hottest I could remember. The air conditioner in the apartment broke 3 times. David called the landlord. The landlord sent a repairman. The repairman fixed it. It broke again. It was like a metaphor. Everything breaking, being fixed, breaking again. I was working on a new project. A big one. A renovation of a historic house in the old part of the city. It was going to be beautiful. The kind of project I'd dreamed about. The kind of project that made me remember why I'd become an architect in the first place. I threw myself into it. I worked late. I worked weekends. I avoided the apartment. I avoided David. I avoided the silence that had settled between us like dust on furniture. He noticed. He'd say, "You're working too hard." He'd say, "You need to take a break." He'd say, "I miss you." I'd smile. I'd say, "I miss you too." And I'd go back to work. I'd go back to my drafting table. I'd go back to designing the house, the beautiful house, the house that would be someone else's home. The house that wasn't mine. I route going to the library. I'd tell David I was working late. I'd go to the library and I'd use their computers. I'd see RCH for Sarah. I'd see RCH for her husband. I'd see RCH for anything I could use. I found her husband's LinkedIn. Tom. He worked in sales. He was at a mid-sized company. He had a picture of himself in a suit, smiling, looking friendly. I could see his face. I could see his eyes. I could see a man who didn't know his wife was sleeping with someone else. I thought about messaging him. I opened a draft. I typed a message. I deleted it. I typed it again. I deleted it. I couldn't do it. Not yet. It would tip my hand. It would give away the game. I needed to wait. I needed to be smart. I went home. David was asleep. I got into bed next to him. I lay there in the dark and I listened to him breathe. He was so peaceful. He was so unairy. He was a man who had no idea his life was about to collapse around him. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt something else. Something cold. Something that had been growing inside me for months. Something that was going to make sure he felt every single thing he'd put me through. The project finished in September. The historic house. It was beautiful. The owner threw a party. A housewarming. I brought David. I introduced him to people. I smiled. I made conversation. I showed off the work I'd done. People complimented me. They said I was talented. They said I had a future. They said I should start my own firm. I drank champagne. I looked at the house. I looked at the beautiful house I'd renovated. I looked at the owner, a woman about my age, standing in her kitchen, laughing with her friends. She was happy. She was settled. She was the kind of woman I'd wanted to be. I looked at David. He was standing across the room, talking to someone I didn't know. He was smiling. He was charming. He was the man I'd fallen in love with. The man I'd married. The man who'd taken my money and given it to his mother. I walked over to him. I touched his arm. He turned to look at me. Are you okay? He said. You look tired. I'm fine, I said. I just need some air. I went outside. I stood on the porch and I looked at the street. The night was still. The stars were out. I could hear the Pa Rudy behind me. Laughter. Music. People having a good time. I pulled out my phone. I opened the Notes app. I looked at the groceries list. I'd been keeping it for months. It was long now. Long and detailed and damning. I called my lawyer. She answered on the second ring. Hello, it's me, I said. How much longer? Paperwork is filed. The lien is in place. We're just waiting for the response. It could take a few weeks. A few weeks, I said. The holidays are coming, she said. Everything slows down. But we'll get there. Thank you, I said. I'll be ready. I went back inside. I found David. I smiled. I touched his arm. I told him I loved him. He said he loved me too. I believed him in a way. I believed he thought he did. But love wasn't enough. It had never been enough. Not for him. Not for his mother. Not for the money they'd taken from me. The Christmas card was designed by the end of October. I'd sketched it, refined it, sent it to a printer. It was simple. A photo of me. A photo of me in front of a house. A house I'd rented. A house that was not mine but looked like it could be. I'd dressed up. I'd put on a nice coat. I'd smiled. It was a good photo. A photo of a woman who looked happy. A photo of a woman who looked like she'd moved on. I ordered 50 copies. I addressed them. I stamped them. I put them in a box in my closet. I sent one to Margaret. I sent it in November. I waited. I waited for her to call. I waited for her to say something. I waited for the phone to ring. It didn't ring. Not right away. She waited. She was patient too. She was good at waiting. She'd been waiting her whole life. Waiting for her husband to die. Waiting for her son to marry. Waiting for the money to come through. But she hadn't waited long enough. The card went out on November 15th. I remember the date because I dropped it in the mailbox on my way to work. I stood there for a moment, holding the envelope, and I thought about what was inside. A photo. A simple photo. But I'd taken it myself. I'd framed it myself. I'd made sure the light was right and the angle was right and the message was clear. The message was this: I was fine. I was better than fine. I was thriving. And I was right there in the background, visible only if you knew where to look. The house. Margaret's house. The one she'd bought with my money. I'd made sure it was just visible over my left shoulder. A sliver of porch. A glimpse of the front door. The kind of detail you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. But she'd be looking. She'd always been looking. The first week of December came and went. No call. No text. No message from David asking why his mother was upset. I waited. I watched. I went to work. I made dinner. I smiled. I kept going. The second week, it snowed. Heavy snow. The kind that shuts down the city. I stayed home. David stayed home. We sat in the apartment and watched the snow fall and pretended we were a normal couple. He made hot chocolate. He put on a movie. He tried to hold my hand. I let him. I let him hold my hand. I sat next to him on the couch and I watched the movie and I thought about the CA road. I wondered if she'd opened it. I wondered if she'd seen the photo. I wondered if she'd looked at the house in the background and felt a chill run down her spine. The third week of December, I got a call. I was at work. My phone buzzed on my desk. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But I did. I picked it up and I said, "Hello, Elena." It was her. Margaret. Her voice was different. Thinner. More fragile. The kind of voice you use when you've been knocked off balance. Margaret, I said. What a surprise. How are you? I received your CA road. Oh, good, I said. I was wondering if it had arrived. I sent them out a few weeks ago. I wanted to make sure everyone had them in time for the holidays. Elena. She paused. I could hear her breathing. That house in the background. Where was that taken? I smiled. I smiled at the wall of my office. I smiled at the drafting table and the blueprints and the coffee cup that had gone cold. Just a little place I found, I said. I've been doing some traveling. Getting out of the city. You know how it is. Elena, that's not a rental. That's my house. Your house, I said. Marga, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been to your house. I wouldn't even know where to find it. I heard her take a breath. A deep one. The kind you take when you're trying to control yourself. Elena, I'm not a fool. I know what you're doing. Marga, I'm not doing anything. I sent you a Christmas CA road. A nice Christmas CA road. With a photo of me in front of a nice house. There's nothing more to it than that. Where did you get that photo? I took it myself, I said. With my phone. I was out for a drive and I saw a pretty house and I thought that would make a nice backdrop. So I pulled over and I took a picture. That's all. You're lying to me. Marga, I'm a little offended. Why would I lie to you? You're my mother-in-law. We're family. I heard her breathing change. It got faster. Shallower. The sound of a woman who was realizing something she didn't want to realize. I know about the money, I said. I know about the deed. I know about the house. And I know about the investment account. The one David opened without telling me. The one that has $58,000 RS in it. She was silent. The kind of silence that's louder than screaming. Marga, I said. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to have a big, dramatic showdown. I'm just going to take what's mine. And I'm going to let the courts decide what that is. David would never. David did, I said. He signed the paperwork. He co-signed the deed. He opened the account. He moved the money. I have proof of all of it. I've had proof for months. I heard her exhale. A long, slow exhale. The sound of a woman who is being asked to accept something she'd spent her whole life trying to avoid. Elena, she said. Please. Let's talk about this. Let's sit down and talk about this like adults. We can sit down, I said. But I'm not going to talk. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. And you're going to listen. I hung up. And I sat there for a moment. STA ring at the phone. My heart was beating fast. My hands were shaking. But I didn't feel SCA red. I felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt powerful. David came home that night with a look on his face. The kind of look you have when you've just been told something you didn't want to hear. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood in the doorway, his coat still on, his keys still in his hand. Your mother called you, I said. Didn't she? He nodded. What did you do? I sent her a Christmas card, David. A nice, normal Christmas CA road. Is that a crime? She's upset. She's really upset. Is she? I said. I'm surprised. I thought she'd like the photo. It's a good photo. I look happy. He walked into the living room. He sat down on the couch. He put his head in his hands. She told me about the money. She told me about the house. Which house? I said. The one you bought with my money, the one you never told me about. The one you put in her name. It's not like that, he said. It's not what you think. Tell me what it is then. Tell me what I'm supposed to think. He looked up. His eyes were red. The kind of red that comes from crying or not sleeping or both. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt something else. Something cold. It was my mother's idea, he said. She said it would be a good investment. She said we could sell it later, after the market went up. She said it would be a nest egg. For us. For us, I said. But it's in her name. She's old, Elena. She was worried about taxes. She said it would be easier this way. Easier for who? Easier for you, easier for her, easier for everyone except me. He didn't answer. He just sat there. He looked like a little boy. A little boy who'd been caught stealing from the Kaija. David, I said. I have a lawyer. I've had a lawyer for months. I know everything. I know about the deed. I know about the account. I know about Sarah. His head snapped up. His eyes went wide. The color drained from his face. Sarah, he said. Sarah is just a colleague. She's just someone I work with. David, I read your texts. I read all of them. I know what you said about me. I know how you talked to her. I know about the lunches and the meetings and the phone calls. I know about all of it. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He tried again. It's not what you think. I never slept with her, never touched her, never told her she was easier to talk to than your wife, never told her you wished I'd handled the dowry better. Never told her you wished I was more like her." He didn't answer. He couldn't answer. There was nothing to say. "I don't see a re if you slept with her," I said. "I mean, I do, but it's not the point. The point is, you lied to me. You took my money. You had assets. You spent 10 years pretending to be one person when you were someone else entirely." "I'm not someone else," he said. "I'm still me. I'm still David. I'm still your husband." "No," I said. "You're not. You're a man who paid his mother with his wife's savings. You're a man who told another woman things he never told me. You're a man who stopped being my husband the moment you signed that deed." I walked over to the table. I opened the drawer. I pulled out the envelope I'd read. The separation agreement. The one my lawyer had drafted. I'd been writing it in my bag for weeks. Waiting for the right moment. I slid it across the table. "Sign it." I said. "What is this?" "It's a separation agreement. It says I get half the assets. It says I get the house. It says I get the money in the investment account. It says you don't contest any of it. I can't sign this. This is insane." Insane is paying your mother $50,000 without telling your wife. Insane is hiding assets in a separate account. Insane is having an emotional affair with a woman you work with and thinking your wife won't find out. That's insane, David. This is just paperwork. He looked at it. He looked at me. He looked back at it. "I'm not going to sign this," he said. "Yes," I said. "You agree?" He said no again. He said it 3 times. Each time I waited. I waited until he was done. I waited until the words ran out. And then I picked up my phone. "I'm going to call S.A. Ross' husband," I said. "I'm going to tell him everything. I'm going to send him screenshots of every message you ever sent her. And then I'm going to send them to your firm's HR department. And then I'm going to file a formal complaint. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did." He read at me. His mouth was open. He looked like a man who'd just realized he'd been trapped. "You wouldn't do that," he said. "Watch me." Root dialing. He signed the agreement. He signed it on the kitchen table. I watched his hand move across the page. I watched the pen scratch against the paper. I watched him write his name, and I didn't feel relief. I felt something horrider. Something that had been growing inside me for months. Something that wasn't going to stop until this was finished. He pushed the paper across the table. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. His mouth was a thin line. He looked like a man who'd just lost a fight he didn't know he was in. "Are you happy now?" he said. "No," I said. "I'm not happy. But I'm not sad either. I'm just done." I picked up the paper. I folded it. I put it in my bag. I stood up and I walked to the door and I looked back at him. He was still sitting at the table. His hands were flat on the surface. He looked small. Smaller than I'd ever seen him. "I'll be back for my things tomorrow," I said. "I'd appreciate it if you weren't here." "Elena, please. Can we just talk about this? We've been talking for 10 years, I said. "I don't have anything left to say." I left. I walked out the door and I went down the stairs and I got in my car. I sat there for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel, ring at the Dashboe Road. The apartment building was dark. The street was empty. The whole world was quiet. I drove to my lawyer's office. It was late, past 7, but she told me to come whenever I had the signed papers. I called her from the car. She said she'd meet me. She was there when I arrived. She was standing in the lobby, her coat on, her briefcase in her hand. She looked tired but alert. She looked like a woman who'd done this 100 times. "Let me see," she said. I handed her the paper. She unfolded it. She read it. She nodded. "Good," she said. "This is good. This is very good." He signed it. "I can see that. You did the right thing." I stood there. I looked at her. I didn't feel like I'd done the right thing. I felt like I'd done the only thing. The only thing I could do. "What happens now?" I said. "Now we file it. We get the court to approve it. We start the process of asset division. It'll take a few weeks. Maybe a month." "A month," I said. "Sometimes it takes longer. Depends on how complicated they make it. They won't make it complicated, I said. They don't have a choice. She looked at me. She tilted her head. She had the kind of look that said she'd seen a lot of women walk through her door. A lot of women who'd been lied to and cheated on and taken advantage of. And she'd seen some of them crumble and some of them fight. She was trying to figure out which one I was. Where are you staying tonight? She said. I hadn't thought about it. You can't go back there. Not tonight. It's too soon. He's going to be angry. He's going to try to talk to you. He's going to try to manipulate you. You need to be somewhere else. I'll get a hotel. Good. And Elena, don't answer his calls. Don't respond to his texts. Let him talk to me. That's what I'm here for. I nodded. I shook her hand. I walked out of the building and I got back in my car and I drove to a hotel. A chain hotel. One of those ones with the cheap rooms and the thin walls. I checked in. I used my credit card. I went to my room. I sat on the bed. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't read a book. I just sat there. I looked at the wall. I looked at the window. I looked at the clock on the nightstand. 10 o'clock. 10:15. 10:30. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. David. He was calling. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. He called again. I let it ring. He called a third time. I turned off my phone. I lay down. I read at the ceiling. I thought about the house. The house I'd bought. The house I'd gotten back. The house that was going to be mine. I thought about the deed I'd found. The deed that had changed everything. I thought about Margaret. I thought about her face when she'd seen the Christmas road. I thought about the phone call. The way her voice had cracked. The way she'd tried to sound strong. I thought about David. I thought about the way he'd signed the paper. The way his hand had moved across the page. The way he'd looked at me when he was done. I thought about the 10 years I'd spent with him. The 10 years I'd wasted. The 10 years I'd never get back. And then I thought about Sarah. I thought about her husband. I thought about the little girl. I thought about the message I'd route to write and deleted. I thought about sending it. I thought about what would happen if I did. I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Everything hurt. My head. My back. My heart. I lay in bed for a long time. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to face the day. But I got up. I got up because I had to. I had things to do. I had a life to rebuild. I had a house to claim. I went back to the apartment. David was gone. Just like I'd asked. The place was empty. His stuff was still there. His clothes. His books. His expensive watch on the dresser. But he wasn't there. I walked through the rooms. I looked at the furniture we'd bought together. The paintings we'd chosen. The couch we'd argued over. It all looked different now. Like someone else's life. Like someone else's house. I route packing. I packed my clothes. My books. My photos. My mother's jewelry. I packed the things that mattered. The things that were mine. I left everything else. I left the couch and the paintings and the furniture we'd argued over. I left them for him. I didn't want them. I went to the study. I opened the filing cabinet. I took the deed. I took the investment account statements. I took everything I'd found. I put it all in a folder. I put the folder in my bag. I looked around one last time. The apartment was quiet. The light was gray. The kitchen counter was empty. The coffee cups were gone. The life we'd built was gone. I walked out the door. The next few weeks were a blur of phone calls and emails and meetings with my lawyer. The court filed the separation agreement. Margaret contested it. She hired her own lawyer. She tried to claim the property was a gift. She tried to claim the investment account was separate. She tried to claim I'd stolen the money. I didn't fight her. I let my lawyer fight her. I just kept showing up. I kept going to work. I kept moving four-way road. I kept getting up in the morning and going to bed at night and doing the things you do when your life is falling apart. The house was the tricky part. The court put a lien on it. They froze the asset. They said we had to settle it before anything else could move four-way road. I waited. I was good at waiting. I saw David once during that time. He was leaving his office. I was driving past. He didn't see me. He was walking with Sa. They were laughing. They were holding hands. He looked happy. He looked like a man who'd just gotten what he wanted. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just watched them and I thought about the Christmas CA road. I thought about the picture I'd taken. The picture of the house. The picture of the house I'd bought. The house that was going to be mine. I drove to the house the next weekend. I drove north. 2 hours. I pulled up in front of the house. Margaret was in the driveway. The curtains were drawn. The grass was overgrown. The place looked neglected. I got out of the car. I walked to the front door. I knocked. She opened it. She looked at me. Her face was harrowed. Her eyes were narrow. She looked like a woman who'd been waiting for a fight. Elena, she said. Margaret, I said. We need to talk. She stood aside. She let me in. I walked into the living room. The living room I'd paid for. The living room she was living in. I stood in the middle of it and I looked around. It was clean. It was neat. It was the home of a woman who'd gotten exactly what she wanted. Sit down, I said. She sat. She sat in her chair. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked at me. She looked at me like she was ready to go to war. Margaret, I said. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to make this ugly. I just want what's mine. This house is not yours, she said. I bought this house with my own money. No, I said. You didn't. I bought this house. The money I gave you at the altar. The $50,000 RS. That's where it went. And I have proof. She didn't answer. She just sat there. Her hands were clasped so tight her knuckles were white. I don't want to take everything from you, I said. But I'm not going to let you keep it. David signed that deed, she said. He agreed to the purchase. He agreed to the arrangement. David was my husband, I said. He didn't have the right to give away my money. Not without my consent. And you knew that. You knew it when you asked for it. You knew it when you put it in your account. You knew it when you bought this house. Elena, she said. Please. Don't do this. Do it. Take back what's mine. Take back what you stole. It wasn't stealing. It was a gift. A gift is something you give freely. You didn't give me anything. You took. You took and you took and you took some more. And I let you. I let you because I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought it was what a good wife would do. I thought if I gave you what you wanted, you'd finally accept me. She was silent. She was looking at me. Her face was changing. The hardness was cracking. Something else was showing through. I was wrong, I said. I was wrong to let you walk all over me. I was wrong to let David walk all over me. I was wrong to pay that money. But I'm not wrong now. I'm right. I'm right to take back what's mine. Please, she said. This is my home. I'm an old woman. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem, I said. You should have thought about that before you took my money. She root crying. She cried. Her shoulders shook. Her voice cracked. She made the kind of sounds that were supposed to make you feel sorry for her. But I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt nothing. You're a cold woman, Elena, she said. Maybe, I said. Maybe I am. But you made me this way. You and David. You made me into someone who doesn't cry anymore. I left her there. I left her in her room chair, crying. I walked out the door and I got in my car and I drove back to the city. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see her face. The court ruled in my favor. They ruled that the property was a marital asset. They ordered its sale. They ordered the investment account to be divided. They ordered a lot of things. All of them in my favor. Margaret moved out of the house. She moved into an apartment. A small one. A rental. I heard from my lawyer that she'd been telling people she was devastated. She'd been telling people I'd ruined her life. I didn't see what she told people. I'd stopped seeing a long time ago. The house went on the market. It sold in 3 weeks. The money went into an account in my name. The full amount. $50,000 RS, plus interest. Plus the increase in value. I didn't get everything I wanted. But I got enough. I got enough to start over. I bought a place of my own. A small condo on the east side of the city. It had good light and a view of the park and a kitchen that actually had counter space. It was nothing like the craftsman I'd wanted with David. It was better. It was mine. The day I moved in, I sat on the floor in the empty living room, and I looked at the walls and I thought about everything that had happened. The wedding, the dowry, the deed, the texts, the Christmas CA road, the lawyer, the court, the house. It all felt like a story someone else had lived. A story I'd read in a book. A story that had nothing to do with me, but it was my story. It was mine. And I was still here. I didn't see David for a long time. He called a few times. I let it go to voicemail. He left messages. He said he wanted to talk. He said he missed me. He said he was sorry. He said a lot of things. I didn't listen to all of them. I deleted most of them. He sent emails. Long ones. The kind you write at 3 in the morning when you can't sleep. The kind where you try to explain yourself, but you just end up sounding pathetic. I read the first one. I didn't read the rest. I heard through mutual friends that he and Sarah had stopped seeing each other. That she'd left her husband. That her husband had found out and she'd moved out and she'd asked David to do the same. And he hadn't. He'd stayed with me. He'd stayed married to me, even as he was building a life with her. I didn't know if that was true. I didn't see a re. It didn't matter anymore. I focused on my work. The historic house project had opened doors for me. People wanted to hire me. I sta getting calls. Referrals. I was busy. I was building a business. I was building a life. I met someone. His name was Peter. He was a contractor. I'd hired him for a project. He was good at his job. He was direct. He didn't lie. He showed up when he said he would, and he did what he said he'd do, and he didn't make excuses. I liked that. I liked it a lot. We sta dating. Slowly. Ca refully. I didn't want to rush. I didn't want to make the same mistakes. He didn't push. He didn't pressure. He just showed up, and he was steady, and he was there. I told him about David. I told him about the dowry. I told him about the house. I told him everything. He listened. He didn't flinch. He didn't look at me like I was damaged. He just said, "That must have been Ha Road." "It was," I said. "But I'm okay now." "I know you are he said. "I can tell." 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from my lawyer. She said Marga Rhett had contacted her. She wanted to talk. She wanted to apologize. She wanted to make things right. I said no. I said it flat out. I said I wasn't interested. My lawyer said, "Elena, she's an old woman. She's alone. She's lost her house. She's lost her son's respect. Maybe she's Leah or Ned something." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm not the one who needs to hear it." I didn't talk to Marga Rhett. I didn't talk to David. I didn't talk to anyone who'd been part of that life. I just moved 4-way road. I kept going. I kept building. But I did get one call. A call I wasn't expecting. It was from Tom. Sarah's husband. He'd found my number somewhere. He'd looked me up. "Are you Elena?" he said. "Yes. I'm Tom," he said. "I'm Sarah's husband." "Well, I was." "I know who you are," I said. "Look, I don't want to drag you into anything. I found out about David. I found out about the whole thing. And I found out that you knew. That you knew before I did." "I didn't tell you," I said. "I thought about it. But I didn't." "I know," he said. "I wish you had. It would have saved me a lot of time. But I understand why you didn't." "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry for what happened. I'm sorry for what she did." "It's not your fault," he said. "You didn't make her cheat. You didn't make him cheat. They made their own choices." "How are you doing?" I said. "I'm okay. I have my daughter. She's the only thing that matters. The rest of it. It's just stuff." I looked at the phone. I looked at the window. I looked at the park outside. The leaves were changing. Autumn. "My favorite season. Tom," I said. "I know this is strange. But if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who gets it, you can call me." "Thanks," he said. "I appreciate that." We hung up. I put the phone down. I stood in my kitchen and I looked at the room and I thought about how far I'd come. How far I'd come from the church. From the thermostat. From the check. From the checkbook in my hand. The Christmas CA road. I'd sent one CA road. Just one. But I'd thought about sending more. I'd thought about sending one every hour. A new photo. A new house. A new life. I'd thought about it, and I'd decided not to. One was enough. One was all it took. After I sent it, I got a letter. A handwritten letter. In an envelope with no return address. I opened it. It was from Margaret. It was 3 pages long. Her handwriting was small and neat, the handwriting of a retired schoolteacher. She wrote about her childhood. About her parents. About the house she'd grown up in. The house she'd bought with my money. She wrote about David. About how she'd always wanted the best for him. About how she'd been afraid I wasn't good enough. About how she'd been wrong. About how she was sorry. I read the whole thing. I read it twice. I put it back in the envelope. I put the envelope in a drawer. I didn't write back. Peter came over that night. He brought dinner. Chinese. My favorite. We ate on the couch. We watched a movie. We fell asleep on the couch, tangled up in each other, the TV still on. I woke up in the middle of the night. I looked at him. He was sleeping. He was peaceful. He was the kind of man who didn't have secrets. The kind of man who'd never lie about a house or a dowry or a woman he worked with. I thought about David. I thought about the day we got married. I thought about the check. I thought about the money. I thought about the years I'd wasted. And then I thought about the Christmas card. The card I'd sent to Margaret. The card that had changed everything. I thought about the photo. The photo of me in front of the house. The house that was mine. I smiled. I smiled in the dark. I smiled and I closed my eyes and I went back to sleep. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer. The final paperwork was done. The assets were divided. The divorce was official. I was free. I went to work. I worked on a new project. A renovation. A house for a young couple. They were excited. They had plans. They had dreams. I designed their kitchen. I designed their bathroom. I designed the windows that would let in the morning light. I designed the whole thing. And when I was done, I looked at the plans and I thought about how this was what I was good at. Building things. Making something out of nothing. Taking a broken space and turning it into a home. I signed my name at the bottom of the page. My name. Elena. Just Elena. I left the office. I drove home. I walked into my condo. I stood in the middle of my living room. I looked at the walls. I looked at the window. I looked at the view of the park. I was alone. I was fine. I was better than fine. I was ready. I picked up my phone. I dialed Peter's number. He answered on the second ring. Hey, I said. You want to come over? I'll be there in 20. Good. I hung up. I sat on the couch. I waited. I wasn't waiting for someone to save me. I wasn't waiting for someone to fix me. I was waiting for someone to share my life. My life. Not his. Not ours. Mine. The doorbell rang. I got up. I walked to the door. I opened it. Peter was standing there. He was smiling. He was holding a bottle of wine. Hey, he said. Hey, I said. Come in. He walked in. He looked around. He always looked around when he came over. Like he was seeing the place for the first time. You redecorated, he said. Just moved a few things. It looks good. Thanks. We sat on the couch. He opened the wine. He poured us each a glass. He held up his glass. To you, he said. To the new place. To the new place, I said. We drank. He smiled. I smiled. We talked. We talked about work. We talked about plans. We talked about nothing. It was easy. It was simple. It was everything. I thought about David. I thought about the church. The thermostat. The checkbook. The $50,000 RS. I thought about the house. The Christmas card. The phone call. The silence. I thought about it all, and I thought about the woman I'd been. The woman who'd stood at the altar and written a check. The woman who'd let herself be lied to. The woman who'd paid to be loved. I wasn't that woman anymore. I'd never be that woman again. Peter, I said. Can I tell you something? Of course. I'm happy, I said. I'm really happy. Good, he said. You should be. I leaned into him. He put his arm around me. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't think about the money. The final conversation happened on a Thursday. I hadn't planned it. I'd been avoiding it for months, telling myself I didn't need closure, telling myself I'd already gotten everything I needed from the divorce papers and the house sale and the bank account. But then Peter asked me a question over breakfast, and the question was simple, and the answer was complicated. Do you ever think about him? I put down my coffee cup. The kitchen light was that thin winter gray. I could see my own reflection in the window. I'd cut my hair shorter. It looked better that way. More intentional. I think about the version of him I thought existed, I said. Not the actual one. I don't think about the actual one much at all. Peter nodded. He didn't push. He never pushed. But I could see the question sitting there, underneath the surface. The question about whether I was really done. The question about whether there was still something unresolved. I called David that afternoon. He answered on the third ring. I could hear the surprise in his voice when he said my name. Elena. It's been a while. Yeah, I said. It has. What's this about? I want to sit down with you. Talk. One conversation. I'm not asking for anything. I just need to say some things. He paused. I could hear him breathing. I could hear the hesitation, the calculation. He was trying to figure out what I wanted, what angle I was playing. Okay, he said. When tonight? 7 o'clock. My place. Your place. I have a condo now. I'll send you the address. I hung up before he could ask any more questions. I texted him the address. I went about my day. I went to work. I finished a set of blueprints. I answered emails. I did the normal things normal people do. And I thought about what I was going to say. I wanted to say a lot of things. I wanted to say everything I'd held in for 10 years. But I knew when the moment came, it wouldn't be a speech. It wouldn't be a script. It would be whatever came out. And what came out would be the truth. He arrived at 7:15. He was late. He'd always been late. That was one of the things I'd stopped noticing, the way he made me wait. I opened the door and he was standing there, his hands in his pockets, his coat collar turned up. He looked older. Thinner. His hair was grayer at the temples. Elena, he said. Come in. I led him into the living room. I'd set out 2 chairs, facing each other. No coffee table between us. No distractions. He looked at the chairs, and he looked at me, and I could see him trying to read the room. Sit down, I said. He sat. I sat across from him. The room was quiet. I could hear the heater kicking on, the soft hum of the building. The light was fading outside the window. The parquet was arcade. This is a nice place, he said. You've done well. I have, I said. He looked around. His eyes moved over the walls, the furniture, the small things I'd collected. I watched him take it in. I watched him realize I'd built a life without him. What do you want to talk about? He said. Everything, I said. The wedding. The money. The house. Sarah. Your mother. All of it. Elena, I've already apologized. I've apologized 100 times. What more do you want from me? I don't want anything from you, David. That's the point. I don't want anything at all. He sat back in his chair. His shoulders dropped. I'd seen that movement before, the way he relaxed when he thought he was off the hook. He still didn't understand. I spent 10 years with you, I said. 10 years. And I thought, for most of that time, that we were building something together. I thought we were partners. I thought you loved me. I did love you. No, I said. You didn't. You loved the idea of me. You loved having someone who made your life easier. Someone who didn't ask questions. Someone who wrote checks. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He didn't have anything to say. The dowry, I said. That was never about tradition, was it? That was about control. Your mother wanted to see how far she could push me. And you let her. You helped her. You made it happen. She was my mother. She was old. She was scared of losing me. She was scared of losing control. And you gave it to her. You gave her my money. You gave her my trust. You gave her everything I'd built. I leaned 4-way road. I looked at him. I looked at his eyes, the eyes I'd once thought were kind. When I found the deed, I thought I'd be angry. I thought I'd scream. But I didn't. I just felt empty. And I stayed empty for a long time. I stayed empty because I'd spent so long trying to be what you wanted that I forgot what I wanted. What I needed. You could have talked to me, he said. You could have told me how you felt. I did, I said. I told you 100 times. I told you about the houses I wanted. I told you about the life I wanted. I told you about the partnership I wanted. And you didn't hear me. You didn't want to hear me. That's not fair. Fair, I said. You want to talk about fair? Fair is $50,000. Fair is a deed in your mother's name. Fair is a woman you told she was easier to talk to than your wife. That's fair. That's what you gave me. He looked down at his hands. I watched him. I watched the way his fingers moved, the way he rubbed his thumb against his palm. He was nervous. He had every reason to be. Sarah, I said. Did you love her? He didn't answer. He just kept looking at his hands. I don't need to know, I said. I don't see a re. I really don't. But I want you to understand something. You didn't just cheat on me. You dismantled me. You took every piece of who I was and you handed them out to other people. To your mother. To Sarah. To anyone who could make you feel better about yourself. Elena, you never meant to hurt me. I know. You never meant to do any of it. You just didn't think. You didn't think about what it would do to me. You didn't think about what it would cost. I paused. I looked at the window. The sky was dark now. The streetlights were on. I thought about the church. The thermostat. The check. I thought about how cold I'd felt that day, even though it was 88 degrees. Enough is enough, I said. That's what I told myself the day I found the deed. I said those exact words. And I meant them. I meant them more than I've ever meant anything. He looked up. His eyes were wet. The kind of what you see in someone who's been caught. Someone who's run out of excuses. I'm not going to give you a chance, David, I said. I'm not going to give you a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance. I'm giving you your freedom. It's what you wanted, isn't it? But it's going to cost you. What does that mean? It means I'm done. I'm done being the woman who paid to be loved. I'm done being the woman who waited. I'm done being the woman who swallowed everything you threw at me. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the separation agreement. The one he'd signed. The one I'd already filed. I pulled out a second copy. A clean one. I placed it on the floor between us. I'm filing the final papers tomorrow, I said. The divorce will be finalized in a few weeks. I'm not asking you to sign anything else. I'm telling you what's happening. You can't just I can. I am. The house is sold. The money is in my account. The investment account is divided. There's nothing left for you to fight for. But we were married, he said. We were supposed to be forever. We were supposed to be a lot of things. But we weren't any of them. We were just two people who made a promise they couldn't keep. I stood up. I walked to the door. I opened it. I stood there, holding it open, the cold air from the hallway rushing in. I want you to leave, I said. I want you to leave and I want you to not come back. I don't want your apologies. I don't want your explanations. I don't want anything from you. He stood up slowly. He walked to the door. He stopped in front of me. He looked at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. You're different, he said. You've changed. Everyone changes, I said. The question is what you do with it. He stepped into the hallway. I closed the door. I locked it. I leaned against it. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. He knocked. Just once. A soft knock. The kind that was half question, half plea. I didn't open it. I waited. He knocked again. I waited. I heard him walk away. I heard his footsteps, slow, heavy, getting quieter. I heard the elevator doors open. I heard them close. I walked back to the living room. I sat down. I looked at the chairs. They were empty. I sat in the chair he'd been sitting in. I put my hands on the armrests. I looked at the chair where I'd been sitting. The place I'd sat when I'd told him everything. I thought about all the things I could have said. All the things I'd held back. All the words I'd swallowed over the IRS. I thought about the wedding. The dowry. The check. The church. The thermostat on the wall. I thought about the house. The Christmas CA road. The photo. The sliver of porch in the background. I thought about Margaret. The letter in the drawer. The apology I'd never accepted. I thought about Sarah. Tom. The little girl. The lives that had been broken and rebuilt. I thought about Peter. The way he looked at me. The way he didn't ask me to be anyone other than who I was. And I thought about myself. The woman who'd stood at the altar with a checkbook in her hand. The woman who'd paid to be loved. The woman who'd learned that you can't buy love. You can't earn it. You can't be gain for it. You can only choose it. And you can only choose yourself. I got up. I walked to the door. I unlocked it. I opened it. The hallway was empty. The elevator was silent. He was gone. He was really gone. I stepped outside. I stood in the hallway. I looked at the empty space where he'd been standing. I thought about all the times I'd opened this door for him, all the times I'd let him in, all the times I'd believed he would stay. I closed the door. I locked it. I walked back to the living room. I picked up the separation agreement. I folded it. I put it in my bag. I went to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. I drank it. I looked out the window at the park. The trees were blurry. The streetlights were casting pools of orange light on the ground. I thought about the Christmas CA road. The CARD I'd sent to MARGA ret. The CARD that had STA root everything. The CARD that had been the first time I'd realized I wasn't powerless. I thought about what I'd do next. I had plans. I had a business. I had a life. I had a man who showed up when he said he would. I had myself. I walked to the bedroom. I opened the drawer. I took out MARGA ret's letter. I read it again. The handwriting. The words. The apology. I didn't need it. I didn't need her to say she was sorry. I didn't need her to acknowledge what she'd done. I didn't need anything from her. I put the letter back in the drawer. I closed it. I went back to the living room. I sat on the couch. I turned on the TV. I didn't watch it. I just let it play. Let the sounds fill the room. Let the light flicker on the walls. I thought about Peter. I thought about calling him. I thought about telling him what I'd done. I decided to wait. I'd tell him tomorrow. I'd tell him over breakfast. I'd tell him over coffee in the morning light. But for now I sat. I sat in my living room. In my condo. In my life. The life I'd built. The life I'd taken back. The story was finished. Not the story of us. That had been over for a long time. The story of me. That was what had been written. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the city. The lights. The buildings. The streets. I smiled. Not a big smile. Not a triumphant smile. Just a small smile. The kind you give yourself when you realize you're okay. You're okay. I said it out loud. The words rely a whisper. I'm okay. I meant it. Every single word.